"It let the ninth one live," Hacken said, and put his helmet on my table like a man laying down something dead. I did not look up from the ledger. That was the first lie of the morning, and it was a small one, and I told it to my own hunt master because my hands were shaking and I did not want him to see. How many did I send out? 11. 9 came back. One is walking, one is not. He waited. Hacken had served my father and he had earned the right to wait at me like weather. Torin, it let the last one live. It had him by the shoulder and it looked at him and it let go. The quill kept moving. Ink, salt, 6 barrels of oil for the lantern road. Then it isn't hungry. Then it isn't an animal, Hacken said. Outside, the fog came off the water the way it always came off the water in Thornhallow. Not rolling, not creeping, just there. The whole world gone soft and gray by the 3rd hour, so that from my own window I could not see the bell tower, only hear it. 11 years I had listened to that bell through fog. 11 years I had told my hold a story, and the story had grown teeth. And now the story had killed a man named Rolf who had 3 children and a boat and no business carrying a spear. Bury Rolf well, I said, from my own purse, not the hold's. They don't want your purse, they want the thing in the east wing dead. He leaned on his knuckles. You have refused 9 times. They are beginning to say things about you that I cannot unsay for you any more. What do they say? Hacken was an honest man, which is a hard thing to keep near a king. That the Alpha King of Thornhallow is frightened of his own house. I let him have that. I let him have it because it was true, though not in the way he meant, and the true way was worse. There will be a 10th hunt, I said. Dawn day after, 40 spears, tell them. He straightened so fast the helmet rocked. You mean it? Tell them, I said, and my voice did not break, and I count that among the ugliest accomplishments of my life. When he was gone, I sat with the ledger, and did not write anything for a long while. Then I went down through the kitchens, and the cold larder, and the passage under the yard that nobody used, because the door at the end of it was mine, and the key had never left my neck. The menagerie had been my grandmother's folly, a long stone hall with iron cages down one side where she had kept sea-eagles and a lame red deer, and once, a bear that died of being loved badly. It had been shuttered since before I was born. It was not shuttered now. It was barred, chained, banded in iron my smiths had bolted through stone, and behind all of it something breathed in the dark with a sound like a boat pulling at its rope. I put my hand flat on the door. I'm sorry, I said. The breathing stopped. It always stopped. That was the part I could never make anyone understand, and the part I never tried, because to explain it I would have had to explain everything. Then it started again, and I went up to be a king. The lantern road runs from the harbor gate to the high hold, 41 posts, and every one of them has to be lit by dark or Thornhallow simply stops. You cannot walk our streets in that fog without a light. You cannot find your own door. For as long as I could remember, the lighting had belonged to the Thrales. First an old woman with a hooked stick, now the granddaughter. I had seen her 1,000 times and never once looked at her. That is not a figure of speech. I want to be exact about it, because I have had 11 years to be honest and I intend to start. She was small. She wore a gray wool coat that had been repaired so many times it had become a different coat. She carried the hooked pole and the oil can, and she went from post to post at the same unhurried pace whether it was raining or blowing or the town was on fire. And my council walked past her, and my guards walked past her, and I walked past her, and if you had asked me her name, I would have said the Lantern Girl and thought I had answered. The hold had a name for her too, not a kind one. Fogluck, they said, Thrale luck. If a boat came back empty, someone would remember passing her on the road at dusk and say so at the tavern, and it would move around the tables the way that talk moves, and nothing ever came of it except that people who owed her coin paid it late, and children dared each other to touch her coat. I knew all of that the way a king knows things as noise. I had never once thought about the fact that a woman was walking alone through a fog our entire hold was afraid of, 41 times a night, past the very wall the monster was behind. I thought about it that night, because that night my guards dragged her into my hall by the arms. In the menagerie yard, the sergeant said. He was breathing hard and he was ashamed and trying to sound angry instead. Inside the gate, my lord. Past the second chain. They had her by both elbows and she was not fighting. That was the first thing. Men were holding her hard enough to leave marks, and she stood in the middle of my hall like a woman waiting for a kettle. Let her go, I said. They let her go. She rolled her shoulder once the way you do and looked up. I have been looked at all my life. By councils, by rival packs, by my father, by the sea. There is a way that people look at the Alpha King of Thornhallow, and it involves the throat and the floor. She looked at me the way you look at a man who has answered his own door. What were you doing in that yard? I said. Lighting the lamps. There are no lamps in that yard. There are 4, she said. Nobody's lit them since your grandmother. But they're on my grandmother's list, and I light what's on the list. The hall was full. The hall was always full at that hour. That was the trouble with my hall. Somebody laughed, one of Fenrick's men, the ones who wore his colors and pretended they were mine. Fenrick himself sat forward. My lord, he said, warm as bread, she was at the beast's door, in the dark, alone. Either the woman is simple or she has business there, and I would very much like to know which. I'd like to know which, I said, from her. Nessa Thrale considered the question as if it deserved consideration. I've been lighting those 4 lamps for 9 years, my lord, every night. Nobody ever noticed which suited me. 9 years. Something went through my chest and out the other side. You have been in that yard, I said carefully, every night for 9 years. Yes. There is a thing behind that door that took a man's arm off at the shoulder 6 days ago. I know, she said. I heard him, he was shouting at it. Fenrick laughed out loud. She's mad. He was shouting at it, she said again to me, not to him, and she said it without heat, and that is the sentence I have thought about most in my life. For a long while before it touched him, 40 men with spears and torches in a stone hall, and every one of them screaming at a thing in the dark. I could hear it from the harbor road, my lord. I don't know what you thought was going to happen. The hall had gone very quiet. My hall did not go quiet. And when you light your 4 lamps, I said, what does it do? For the first time she hesitated, not with fear. She was choosing what to give me. It comes to the door, she said. I did not move. I have hunted since I was 9 years old, and I know how not to move. And it puts its head against it, said the lantern girl, and it waits until I've done, and when I go it makes a sound. She looked at her hands. It's not a hunting sound, my lord. I've a cousin who wails. I know what hunting sounds like. What sound is it then? She said, it's the sound a dog makes when you leave. I cleared my hall. It took some doing. Fenrick did not want to go and made 3 separate speeches about the safety of the hold, each shorter and colder than the last, and I let him make them, and then I told him he could see me at dawn, and something in my face must have finally been the right shape, because he went. Then it was the 2 of us, and the fire and 41 lit lamps out there in the fog, holding my hold together with nothing. Sit, I said. I'm all right standing. Sit down, Nessa Thrale, because I am going to have to look at you for a while, and I would rather not do it over my own boots. She sat. She put her hands around a cup of the mulled stuff the kitchen's made and did not drink it, just held it, and I understood suddenly and stupidly that she was cold, that she had been out on that road for 6 hours and no one, in all the years of that road, had thought about the fact that the lantern girl might be cold. Your grandmother's list, I said. She taught you the road. She taught me a lot of things, careful again. Such as? Nothing. The fire moved. I am not going to hang you, I said. You've committed no crime except keeping 4 lamps lit for a woman who's been dead 9 years. Whatever it is you don't want to say it in this room, and it stays in this room." "That's a very easy promise for a king to make," she said, "and a hard one to keep." "Yes," I said, "it is." "Say it anyway." She looked at me for a long moment. Fog light through the high window, salt on the stone, the bell going somewhere out in all that gray. "She spoke the old tongue," said Nessa Thrale. "The naming tongue, not the songs. Everyone's got the songs, the real one, the one you use on moon-made things." The cup was still full in her hands. "There were 4 women left who had it when I was small," she said. "Then 2, then her, then me. A small shrug that cost her something. That's the whole of it, my lord. That's the great secret of the Fogluck woman. I'm the last person alive who can say a moon-made thing's name and have it hear me. And it has never once been worth a copper. And my grandmother made me swear never to tell a lord, because lords want to use it." I said, "And that thing behind my door is moon-made?" "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because I've stood on the other side of that door for 9 years, she said, "and it's never once smelled like an animal. It smells like the sea after lightning." I stood up. I walked to the window and put both hands on the sill and looked at nothing, at gray, at 11 years. "Can you name it?" "No," she said. I turned around. "I can say a name," she said. "I can't invent one, that's not what it is. A thing's true name is the one it was given by someone who loved it, my lord, the first name, the small name, the one from before it grew. If nobody ever gave it one, it hasn't got one, and there's nothing I can do for it, and I'd be standing in front of 40 spears saying a word into the air like a fool." She set the cup down at last, untouched. "So, did anyone ever love it?" And there it was. 11 years, and a woman in a mended coat asked me the question my council had never once thought to ask, because my council thought the thing in the east wing was a monster that had wandered out of the fog, because that is what their king had told them, standing in that hall, in a voice that did not shake. I could have lied again. I was very good at it by then. I want that written down too. "Sit still," I said. "I'm going to tell you something, and when I'm done you will understand why I've let 9 hunts go into that hall and come back short, and you will think less of me, and you will be right." His name was Ash. I was 14. He was moon-made, a true one, born in the white water off the Hallow rocks in a storm year, and my father brought him up to the hold in a fish crate and set the crate on the table in front of me and said, "There. Now you have something to be responsible for." That was the whole of my father's tenderness. It was more than most men got. He was the size of my 2 hands. He was the color of wet ash, which is why, and I say this without any grandness at all, I called him Ash. I was 14. I was not a poet. He slept in my bed until he could not fit in my bed. He slept against the bed after that. He went into the water with me and up the cliff paths with me, and he grew and grew and did not stop growing, because moon-made things don't. They go on until whatever made them is done, and by the time I was 22 he could put his chin on my shoulder standing. The hold loved him. Children rode him at the harvest fair, 4 at a time. Old men fed him things they should not have fed him. There was a moonstorm the autumn my father died, 12 boats out. Ash went into that water with me, did not go, went. He was in it before I was, and we got 9 boats onto the rocks, and the 10th broke apart around us, and I got hit, and I went under, and he got me by the collar, and he put me on stone, and he turned around and he went back out for the 11th boat. I did not see him again for 4 years. What came back was not what went out. I have thought about it every day since, and the only thing I have ever been able to say for certain is that the sea took him apart and something put him back together wrong, and it did not put his name back in. That is the thing about moon-made creatures that I did not know at 22, and Nessa Thrale's grandmother would have known, and Nessa Thrale's grandmother lit lamps for me and was called Fogluck by my hold. A moon-made thing is held together by the name someone gave it. He came out of that water 11 feet at the shoulder and white as a drowned bone, and he came up the lantern road to my gate, because he still knew the road, and he killed 2 of my men in the yard before I got there. And then he saw me, and he did not know me. That is the whole of it. That is the thing I have carried under my ribs through 11 years and 9 hunts. He looked at me, and there was nothing behind it, not hate, not hunger, only a terrible, enormous nothing, like a house with the family gone out of it. And I stood in my own yard with my arms out, and I said his name, and it did not land. It went through him like a stone through fog. I got him into the menagerie with a haunch of beef in my own hands, and I chained the door, and I went and stood in front of my hold, and told them a monster had come out of the sea. Because I was 22, because I had just buried my father, because a king whose own wolf came back a killer is a king with a curse on him, and my hold had lost 11 boats, and I could not put one more thing on them. So I made him a monster, and a monster is a thing that has to be killed. And I have been refusing to kill him for 11 years while my own men walked into that hall with spears and did not know they were walking in on Ash, who let children ride him at the harvest fair, 4 at a time, and who let the 9th one live hack in. He let the 9th one live. Why do you think he let the 9th one live? I stopped. I had not meant to say the last part aloud. My hands were on the back of the chair, and the wood had come away in strips under them. The lantern girl had not moved through any of it. Ash, she said, testing it, turning it over. Ash, that's a small name, that's a good one, that's the kind that holds. Somebody loved him. Somebody was 14, I said. That's the age it works best, said Nessa Thrail. And then she stood up in my hall in her mended coat, and she looked at the Alpha King of Thornhallow the way you look at a man who has answered his own door, and she said, "Well, then let's go and give it back to him." We did not go that night. I want to say we did. It would be a better story if the king and the lantern girl had gone straight down the passage with a lamp and done the thing, but she stopped at the top of the stair with her hand on the wall and said, "No. No. Not tonight." She was looking down into the dark of the passage the way a fisherman looks at water. "My lord, I've had this in my head for the length of one telling. If I go down there now and get it wrong, I don't get to get it right after." He hears the name once, and if it lands crooked forever. "You said it was a good name." "I said it was a good name. I didn't say I knew how to hand it to him." She turned around. She had to look a long way up to do it, and she did it without any performance at all. Names in the old tongue aren't words, they're directions. You have to know where the thing is standing. And I don't know where he's standing because for 9 years all I've had is a door. "Then what do you need?" "Tomorrow, daylight, what passes for it here. And I need you to tell me things about him that you have not said aloud in 11 years. And you are going to hate every one of them. And we're doing it anyway. The hunt is at dawn, day after." "Then we've got a day," said Nessa Thrail, "which is a great deal more than you've had since your father died." And she picked up her pole and her oil can and went out into my yard to finish a road she had already walked for 6 hours. I watched her go from the top of the stair, post 31, post 32, the little pool of gold in all that gray, moving, stopping, moving. I sent 2 men after her, not to follow her, to carry the oil. She sent them back before post 35. The elder one, Cobb, came up to my hall with his ears red and reported that the lantern girl had said, and he was quoting, "Tell him I've done 41 posts a night for 9 years without a king's arm, and I'll not start being carried now. But he can send them tomorrow if he likes, when it's useful." Hacken, who was there, made a noise into his cup. "Say it," I told him. "I've served this hold 40 years, my lord," Hacken said, "and that is the first time anyone has ever sent your help back with a schedule." Fenric came at dawn, as I had told him to, and he came with 3 of my council behind him, which was the whole of his answer to my summons. He was a handsome man, Fenric. That mattered more than it should have. He had a wide, clean face and a voice built for halls, and he had spent 11 years being right about the monster, which is a very comfortable place for a man to stand. "The hold is grateful," he said. "About the hunt, I want you to know that I said in the tavern that you had come to it in your own time and that no one should speak of it otherwise. That was generous of you." "It was," he let the pleasantry sit. "Now the Thrail woman." "What about her?" "She was inside the second chain, my lord." He spread his hands. "I've no wish to be unkind. She's likely half simple, the grandmother was, they say. But there are men in this hold who have just buried Rolf, and they are going to ask why a woman can walk to that door in the dark and come away whole while a fisherman with a spear comes away in a box. And when they ask it, they will not be asking gently, and they will not be asking you." He paused, exactly long enough. "They'll be asking her." There it was, wrapped in cloth and handed over politely. "Is that a warning, Fenric, or a forecast?" "It's a kindness," he said. "Keep her off the road until the beast is dead. After that, nobody will care. The road is 41 lamps. The road is 41 lamps that a Thrail has lit since your grandmother's time, and nobody has ever once asked what it costs to have the same family walking the same fog every night for 80 years, Fenric said, and I confess it, for one moment I nearly liked him. Then he finished. "Give it to the Cobbs. They've 2 sons wanting work. It's past time." 11 years I had sat in that chair, and let this man be reasonable at me. "Anything else?" "Only that at dawn tomorrow, 40 spears go into that hall," he said. "And this time they come out with a head, or my lord, you and I will have a different conversation in a fuller room." He bowed beautifully and left. Hakon waited until the door had settled. "He's counting. I know what he's doing. He's counting the ones who'd follow him if you flinch, and he's up to enough that he'll say that in your hall in front of 3 of your council." The old man leaned on the table. "Torin, if the 10th hunt fails, he doesn't need the hold's love. He only needs its fear, and he's had 11 years to grow it in your own east wing, and you let him. You gave him a monster." "Yes," I said, "I did." Hakon straightened slowly. "That's the first time," he said, "you've ever answered that." She came at the 9th hour, with fog on her coat, and a piece of bread in her hand that she was eating as she walked, which I mention because no one eats in front of a king, and I had forgotten what it looked like. I took her down. Not to the door. To the gallery, the stone walkway above the menagerie hall, where my grandmother had gone to look at her eagles. There was an iron grill along it. I had not been up there in 11 years, and the dust came off the rail in one long gray curl under my hand. Below us, the hall, 40 feet of stone floor. The old cages down one side, rusted open, empty. Bones in the far corner in a neat pile, and I watched her see that and watched her understand it, that something down there was stacking them. And in the middle of the floor, in the gray light from the seaward slit, ash. She made no sound. That was the thing about her. Any other soul in Thornhallow would have made a sound, and she only put both hands on the grill and looked and went on looking. He was 11 feet at the shoulder and white as a drowned bone. He had scars that did not run like scars. They ran like cracks in ice, all over him, and where they ran the skin under was the color of the sea after lightning. He was lying with his chin on his forelegs, and his eyes were open, and they were open at nothing. "Oh," said Nessa Thrail very quietly. "Oh, you poor thing." I had to hold the rail. "He's not eating," she said. "There's a chute, we put down beef. He eats when he wants." "That's not what I mean." She had not taken her eyes off him. "He's stacking the bones, my lord. He's not eating, he's tidying. That's a house creature. That's a thing that lived in rooms." She pressed closer to the grill. "How long is he like that?" "Days. Then he'll get up and go at the door for an hour." "Does he go at the door or at the lock?" I opened my mouth to say the door, And then I stood there with 11 years going over behind my eyes, and what I remembered was the shape of the marks, high on the frame, where the bar bolt sits. The lock, I said. God help me, the lock. Because he's seen a man open it, she said. Because he knows it's a thing that opens. That's not a beast, that's a mind with the lamp out. And then she said gently, without turning around, tell me about him, not the storm, before. So I stood in the dust of my grandmother's gallery and told a lantern girl about a wolf. That he would not walk on wet stone if there was dry stone to walk on. That he was frightened genuinely, ridiculously frightened of the sound the smithy bellows made, and would go behind me, all 11 feet of him, and put his head under my arm. That he brought me things, not prey, things, a boot, a gull's skull. Once from somewhere I never learned, a woman's shoe, which he laid on my chest while I was sleeping with an air of enormous accomplishment. That when I was 15 and my mother died, he came into my room and did not do anything, did not nose at me or whine, just lay down against the door and stayed there for 3 days so that no one could come in and no one could go out. That the children rode him at the harvest fair, 4 at a time, and the rule was that he stopped when the smallest one said stop, and he always stopped every time on the word because he knew stop. He knew a dozen words. He was not an animal. He was never an animal. I stopped. My voice had gone somewhere I could not follow it. Nessa Thrale turned around and did the most extraordinary thing that anyone had done to me in 11 years. She waited. She did not say, my lord. She did not look away, which is what people do, or reach for me, which is what a very few would have dared. She stood there in her mended coat and let a grown man be broken open in front of her, without hurrying him and without pitying him, the way you stand near someone at a graveside. When I could, I said, that's the whole of him. That's a great deal of him, she said. Say his name. What? Not to him, to me. Say it the way you said it when he was small and being an idiot in the yard. I said Ash. No, she almost smiled. That's the way you say a dead thing again. Ash. That's a funeral. My lord, he wasn't a funeral, he was a wolf who stole a shoe. Her chin came up. Say it like he's about to knock you into the water. And something in me, some 11-year-old scab, came off. Ash, I said. It went out of me and rang off the stone and went down into the hall, and I heard it and I knew what it sounded like, because it sounded like being 22. Down below, the great white head came up off its forelegs. Not fast, not the way it came for a hunt. It came up the way a man's head comes up in a crowded room when he thinks, for 1 second, that someone has said his name. Then it swung and searched and found nothing, and after a long moment it went down again. Nessa Thrale had gone, very still beside me. He heard it, I said. My hands were shaking on the rail and I did not care. He heard it. He heard you, she said, and her voice had changed. That's not the same, and it's better than I hoped. My lord, look at me. That thing down there has been alone in a stone room for 11 years, and it still comes up off the floor for 1 syllable in your mouth. There's a someone in there. It's just got nothing to hold on to. She let go of the grill. Her hands were shaking too, I saw, and I liked her for it more than I have ever liked anyone for anything. I can do it. I know where he's standing now. Where's he standing? At the door, she said. He's been standing at the door for 11 years waiting for a boy to come and open it. We had until dawn. I want to set down what she asked for, because it says everything about her that I could not. She did not ask for gold. She did not ask for my protection, or a title, or the road given to the Cobbs and a purse for the trouble. She asked for 4 things. The oil for the 4 menagerie lamps, because they had to be lit. She was not going to do this in the dark, and neither was he. That the great door be opened by me, not by a smith, not by a guard. He knows what a lock is, she said, and he's watched one man open it. If it swings and it isn't you on the other side, we've spent our 1 chance. that nobody else be in the hall. Nobody. 40 spears in a stone room is what made him a monster the last 9 times. 2 of us and a lamp is what makes him a wolf. And the 4th? She asked at last, standing in my kitchen at the 2nd hour with a cup she still had not drunk. If it doesn't land, she said, you have to kill him yourself in front of them, at dawn. Nessa. No, listen. If the name goes through him and doesn't catch, then he's not there, my lord. There's no one home and there never will be, and what's in that hall is 11 feet of moon-made grief that's already killed 3 men and will kill 40 more, and Fenric will make himself lord of this hold over their bodies and hang me for a witch on the way. She set the cup down. You've spent 11 years refusing to do a hard thing because you loved him. If it fails, you do the hard thing because you loved him. That's the price of me trying. Say it. The fire went. Out on the road, 41 lamps burned in the fog that she had lit before she came to me, because she had not once, in all of this, missed a post. If it fails, I said, I'll do it myself, and I will tell them all of it first, what he was. What I did. That last part's not necessary. It's 11 years overdue, I said. She looked at me for a moment, then she nodded once and picked up her pole. 3rd hour then, she said, bring a good lamp. Fenric was in the passage under the yard. He had 6 men with him, not my men. His in my colors, which is the same trick I had been letting him play in my hall for a decade, and had somehow never once seen for what it was until I saw it in a corridor at 3 in the morning, standing between me and a door. My lord, he looked genuinely sorry. That was his gift. I can't let you. Stand aside. You're going down there with her in the dark the night before the hunt. He shook his head slowly. Torin, I've held my tongue for 11 years. Half this hold thinks you've a curse on you, and the other half thinks you've got something down there you love more than us. And tonight, God help me, I can't tell which half is right, and if you go through that door I will have to choose. Behind me, Nessa Thrail said conversationally, you've a lamp out. Fenric blinked. What? Post 19, Harbor End. She had her oil can on her shoulder. It's been out since the 2nd hour. I saw it from the gate and I've not been able to get down to it because I've been up here with him. She nodded at the 6 men. You've 6 lads standing in a corridor doing nothing. That's a Hold's road with a hole in it, and there's a fog out there you couldn't find your own hand in. Somebody's grandmother is going to walk off the harbor steps tonight, while you're all in here being loyal. Nobody said anything. That's not, Fenric started. It's exactly the point, she said, and you're standing in front of a door in my way. Send 2. And this is the thing, one of them went. Just one at first, a boy of 19 with Fenric's colors on his shoulder who looked at her and looked at the 6 of them and said, It's post 19, sir. In the voice of a man who has just remembered his mother uses that road. And then a second went with him. And the 4 who were left were 4, and 4 men in a corridor is not a wall, it is 4 men in a corridor. Fenric's face did something I had never seen it do. You'll have your hunt at dawn, I told him. Whatever happens down there. On that you have my word, and you have never once had reason to doubt my word, only my nerve. I put my hand on the door. My lord, Fenric said, and for the first time in 11 years his voice was not built for a hall, it was just a man's. What's in there, truly? I could have kept it, one more day, one more night. The habit of it was 11 years deep, and it had my whole throat in its hand. My wolf, I said. And I opened the door and went down. The lamps first, she did that. 4 of them, the old brass ones on the wall brackets, and she went along them with her pole exactly the way she went along the road, unhurried. And the hall came up out of the dark in pieces, the rusted cages, the neat pile of bones, the seaward slit with fog standing in it like water in a glass. And him. He was up. He was up and at the door, our door, the little one, the one I had come through, and he had not made a sound doing it. 11 feet of him, and he was so close that when I came off the last stair I could have touched him. I heard Nessa breathe out very slowly. "Don't move, my lord," she said. "He's smelling you." He was. The great cracked head came down and down until it was level with my chest, and I could see the sea moving under his skin in those white seams. And he put his nose against my coat, and he breathed me in once, twice, 3 times. And nothing happened behind his eyes. Nothing at all. 11 years, and he stood in front of the boy who raised him, and there was no one looking out. "Now," I said, "say it now." "Not yet," her voice was steel. "Not while he's confused, he has to be still." "He is still." "He's searching," she said. "Wait." And the great head came up off my chest, and turned and looked at her. I have never in my life been as frightened as I was in that second. He looked at the lantern girl. And he went down, not a crouch, not a spring. He lowered himself, 4 legs sliding out on the stone until his chin was on the floor at her feet, and he made the sound. The one she'd told me about, in my hall, the sound a dog makes when you leave. Except we hadn't left. We were standing right there, and I understood all at once, and it went through me like the sea. He wasn't asking her to stay. He was asking her to go and get someone. He had been making that sound at a closed door for 9 years at the one person who ever came, and it had never once meant "don't leave me." It had meant "fetch him. Fetch him. He's out there somewhere, please." "Nessa," I said, and my voice was gone. "Nessa, he's been sending you." "I know," she said. There were tears going down her face, and her hands were absolutely steady. "I know. Stand where he can see you, my lord. Right where he can see you." I stood where he could see me. Nessa Thrale knelt down on the stone of my grandmother's menagerie, in her mendied coat, in front of the thing that had broken 9 hunts, and she put her hand flat on the floor between his paws, and she opened her mouth to give an 11-year-old boy's word back to a wolf who had gone into the water to fetch the 11th boat. And up in the yard, through 40 feet of stone, the alarm bell began to ring.